If she sees you and she calls your name, you have to come with her. You're going to be a predator too. They will hide in our garden space, but still have to have their eye on the predator. And go. 1, 2, 3. And we'll discuss why you want your eye on the predator, just so they can say, how close can you get to the predator without being noticed, because you've adapted to the environment. 18, 19, 20. Now, who can you see? Call out their names.
Tommy, I saw you, Dama.
Usually I have one idea I want them to take away from it. You know, big idea. But the other thing I want them to understand for it is learning doesn't happen in the classroom. Learning happens everywhere. Every space they're in, every experience they're having is a learning experience.
Max, I saw you.
Come on up, Max. And then we'll deconstruct it and figure out what worked and get their opinions. What was the easiest thing for you to spot somebody?
I mean, what we want to do is help children grow up into adults who can think about the wildlife and their habitats. It would be nice if some of them grew up to be
Let's just hope it's 8:31, so we need to see where he's at. If we could ask everyone to sit down, it is 8:32 in the Tuesday morning, the 16th. So if we could please sit down. We'll call the meeting to order. I am going to start off today with Marcella Jenkins leading us in prayer. And please ask for rain.
Yes, definitely.
Good morning, everyone. Will you bow your heads as I pray? In the scriptures, you have said that the citizens ought to obey the governing authorities, since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, if I pray for our Mayor, Brenda Gunter, for the various levels of the city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. I am asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern among the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs for our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what will benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of San Angelo. I pray for rain during our dry season that will replenish not only the trees and plants and animals, but as well as us. It is in your most blessed name, Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Lucy, would you please come down? And I would love for you to join us in doing the pledges with your great nieces who are from Holloman Elementary. So Estella and Evelyn Burciago, please come forward.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay. Bye. Thank you. Thank you. There are no proclamations today, so we'll move into public comment. We ask as a reminder to please turn off your cell phones and make sure they're on silent or vibrate. Public comment: issues or items that are not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The council takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do I have anyone in the audience today who would like to offer public comment? Please come forward.
My name is Janice Potter, and I have been born and raised in San Angelo all my life. I live at 1101 North Jefferson. It's where Jefferson runs across North Street, north intersects Jefferson. And for a couple of years ago, they came out and fixed a water leak and dug up the street, made a big hole, and then they repaired it. Since then, we've had some rain, and there's a place in the street where they fixed it that washes out, makes a big pothole, and it stays that way for 2 or 3 months until they try to patch it again. The third time they came out this week, they filled it with dirt and caliche. I have video that shows where every time it rains, whether it's little or much, it runs right across that patch job, washes the street out, and I think that they're spending too much money just patching it up, coming back over and over and over when it does no good. The water runs across there, across the intersection, a block down, and into the river. And I think the patch or the fix-it needs to be a whole lot better, like with cement or whatever, because it's going to wash out every time.
Thank you very much. And Shane's in the audience, so I see him behind that column, so he's made a note of that, okay?
And
Thank
if anybody
you.
wants to see my video, I have it.
You can show it to him. Do you know who Shane Kelton is, ma'am? No. Okay, Shane, he's raising his hand right there. Is there further public comment today? With no public comment, we will close the public comment section and move on into our consent agenda. I'm going to ask each council member if there's anything they'd like to pull from the consent agenda. I'm going to start with Lane.
I have nothing to pull.
Lucy?
Nothing to pull.
Tommy?
No, ma'am.
Tom?
No, ma'am.
Harry?
I don't have anything to pull, but I do have one comment. I want to shout out to the AEP group on Saturday. Had about 1,800 customers that were out of service because of a pole fire, and they responded within about 20 minutes, and within an hour, I had electricity back on, so I appreciate all the effort that they had on that. Nothing to pull.
All right, with no items being pulled from consent agenda, may I have a motion for approval?
So move.
Motion by Harry, is second by Lane. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda as written, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes 6-0, or consent agenda passes 6-0. We will move into the regular agenda, starting with item A, consider resolution and public hearing approving the 2019 annual action plan for use of CDBG and home grant funds, and authorizing the city manager to execute the applications, required certifications, related documents, and annual funding agreement for the approximate allocation of $651,073 of CDBG and $294,961 of home grant funds and $53,000 in program income. And Bob, you are on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor, Council. The annual action plan is our petition for the annual CDBG and home grant funds. It's the last opportunity for citizens to provide input into the plan, and it is due to the HUD on 15 August. The plan certifies that we're meeting federal requirements to include fair housing, anti-discrimination, and ensuring that our projects meet a drug-free environment. It also addresses some key interest items to include housing for the homeless and special needs, public housing availability, and lead-based pain abatement. But most importantly, it documents the projects that we will be funding this year, which we discussed last month. Mayor, you had asked about our 5-year plan.
Yes, sir.
We established 4 main objectives and programs that address those objectives, starting with neighborhood revitalization. You can see that our annual paint blitz, emergency housing repair, and code compliance actions support our revite activities. We also want to increase our affordable housing stock, which is supported through our new home construction. And we address special needs via our TBRA, which is tenant-based rental assistance, and help enhance programs. And lastly, we set an objective to assist and address homelessness, and that is supported by our homeless prevention program and our homeless coalition partnerships. So that's just a little recap of our 5-year plan.
Thank you.
If you recall, last month we discussed some of these projects and the proposed allocation. We are asking for $31,000 for home administration, $131,000 for first-time home buyers, which will assist 8 to 13 clients, $85,000 for TBRA, which will assist 25 to 30 special needs renters, and $120,000 for new home construction. We hope to build at least 3 to 5 new homes. And on the CDBG side, we want $116,000 for admin, $112,000 for project delivery, $186,000 for neighborhood blitz. We're targeting 25 to 30 homes, hopefully more. $125,000 for emergency repairs. We'll roughly target 45 to 60 homes. And then our debt payment. And last month I mentioned that it matures 2025. It actually matures in 2030. We went from a 15-year loan to a 20-year loan. So that's the difference. And the last slide I have here is we are, as you know, we're limited on funding. But we believe that these programs do have impact on the community, especially in neighborhood revitalization. We conducted a study in Blackshear over a 10-year period, and then you can see that we started in 2007, 2009. We invested pretty heavily in that area. And then you saw, which really kind of triggered a pretty steady increase in property values and steady decrease in both code compliance cases and crime rate, which really indicates neighborhood success. Some of the indicators we kind of watch and monitor. So anyway, that's all I have this morning. We're asking you to approve the annual action plan, which I believe you all have copies of. I'd be glad to answer any of your questions.
Will any of these funds be spent in the Bradford neighborhood?
They are. We do have a plan going to Coastal DC next week to address specifically that area. We're going to target some funds specifically for Bradford and homes damaged by the storm.
So that's in addition to this,
Addition
or as
to
part
this.
of this?
It's going to be addition to this.
Okay, so
separate action, separate funding. So yes.
Based off of those funds, is there a specific area that we're targeting right now?
Those are citywide, except for the new home construction. Those are limited to the neighborhoods we targeted for revitalization. Everything else is citywide.
Do I have questions from council?
I'm here.
Lucy, any question? Lane, can't see your face. Yeah. No, that's all right. All right. With that, then I would need a motion to approve item A as read.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
A motion by Lane, a second by Lucy. Do we have public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of item A, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion passes 6-0. We'll move into item B, which is consider approving a professional service agreement under RFQ ES-04-19 to HDR Engineering in the amount of $333,838 for professional services to update the city's master drainage plan and authorizing the city manager to execute all related documents. Shane, you're on.
Mayor, good morning. Well, got to go the right direction first. All right. This is an update to our master drainage plan. Of course, it's as you know, it's getting fairly long in the tooth. So for as far as plans, drainage plans and master plans go for the city, but we go back into our 2019 strategic planning workshop that we had back in the fall. And if you remember, I brought this issue to y'all then, or I guess spring. Brought that issue to you then, where we talked about some of the drainage issues that we're having, especially as it relates to some of the road projects as we're getting ready to design and construct and build some of these things, and the need to update this plan, especially as we're looking at all of the major road work that we're doing as well too, because as you know, our roads are our drainage system for the most part within the city. So with that, you know, our last drainage plan, it was completed in the year 2000. So again, it's been a while, and we've seen substantial growth throughout the city, especially into the west and the southwest part of town, that has really changed a lot of the flow patterns and the volumes of the drainage that we're seeing in that part of town. So what are we looking at when we as we move into this update? And so we're going to go back and look at everything that was done back in the late 90s and in 2000 when we finalized the last plan. Reevaluate all those areas, because over time, even all of those areas have changed. The dynamics of all those areas have changed as well, too. We are working on some improvements right now, currently out of the old plan, namely the Avenue P project, which we're finalizing all our design documents currently right now. We should be ready to go here pretty quick, go to bid on those. And we're also looking at the low water crossing there at East Angelo Draw on Bell Street. As we're reconstructing Bell Street, we're gonna clean up some of those issues that we're having there that were identified in this plan. So again, reevaluating all the things that were identified in the last plan, and then we're going to look at the new areas in town that have cropped up in the last 20 years, 19 or 20 years since it was last evaluated. So, and of course, we know the city staff is fully aware of a lot of those, and so as we move forward, we'll be working with the design firms to identify those areas, and then of course once we identify those areas, they're going to go in there and they're going to model all of these drainage basins around in town, especially the ones that we're seeing the most difficulties with from complaints from citizens and from the staff perspective. We'll go back in there. This company's going to model all of those drainage basins, the flows, the rates, and get all the calculations and all of those things in there, so that we can, as we're moving forward through the project and through this plan update, that they will be able to come up with a ranking criteria that is going to take into not only the amount of flow, the amount of water that's coming down, the life safety issues, and we're going to set ranking criteria for those, and then we are going to prioritize those drainage issues, so we can actually start with a CIP, create basically a 10-year CIP. Unfortunately, we're not blessed with all the money in the world, so we're going to have to prioritize these drainage areas and these problem areas, and then again try to identify funding solutions, and bite off in chunks that we think that we can actually bite those in, and that's what a lot of this is going to do. They're going to provide the solutions for these drainage areas. What can we do? Whether is that regional detention that's going to help this? Is this improving, expanding drainage structures, width of streets, raising heights, lowering heights in certain areas? What are those solutions that we're going to be able to do to address these drainage solutions? And then give us probable costs of what those solutions will be. And as we work through it, and they're going to provide, not only with these probable solutions, but for the first, say, the top 10 projects that we identify that we feel that really need to be addressed, we're going to actually have them go ahead and do some initial construction phasing. Excuse me. Construction phasing for each of those 10 projects, so that we will know if, say, it's going to be a $10 million project. Well, we know that we cannot afford to do all 10 million of it at once. So we're going to identify how it can be best phased in chunks that we can actually afford to do and move forward. And so within those, and then also what this plan is going to do as we're looking forward and we're looking into potential growth patterns of the city, especially again into the south and southwest portions of the city, where we do seem to be seeing the majority of our growth. We are going to look at those areas right outside in the ETJ, and those areas that are developing and that are planned to be developed, or we believe will be developed in the near future, and look at what those developments are going to do to our drainage, what those flows are going to look like, what the increased capacities are going to need to be, and identify those. So as we're moving forward, not only with John James and the planning group and his issues and the engineering side, when we start looking at the stormwater development and those issues from that side of the things, we can also have identified plans and areas that we need to address moving forward, so we're not retroactively trying to go back and correct situations that have been created.
And I'm sure without too much challenge, Foster Road's included in this, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is, yes. And so that's definitely one of those that will be included. And we have a lot of areas identified that are going to be brought into the plan that are not currently in the plan. Mm-hmm. Again, once we rank all of those, we'll have to figure out where all they fall out. And of course, once we have them identified and we have them ranked, then we'll be able to not only bring you a CIP, bring a plan in CIP form that actually has them identified with costs and it may be even possible funding solutions for some of them. We'll also be able to have that ranked solutions in sets, and so with probable cost of solutions, and we can also, if at that point in time, if something changes in the dynamics of any particular area, we can always move those up within the ranking system, and again have them designed and bid out and completed as funding is available. So
sounds like we've spent a lot of time thinking through this whole process and establishing some wants and needs and goals to be accomplished during this. So I love the thought process that you're presenting today, because I think it makes sense for not only this council, but future councils as well, because it gives us a real path forward.
Yes, ma'am. That's the whole thing. I mean, that's the beauty of the master drainage plan is, one, we need to be thinking not only what do we need to correct that's already existing, but what do we need to do now for the future as well too. So.
Right. Do I have questions from Council Lane?
I know this is highly needed in a lot of areas. When the initial study was done in 2000, Shane, did we anticipate just key areas of development and excluded? What has led to us of seeing the drainage that we see now? Did we think that it was going to develop over here, but it ended up over here in the southwest?
Not necessarily. The last drainage plan, when it was conducted, it just identified the hotspot areas. We weren't necessarily looking at future development areas in that last study, and that's why we found it so critical this time to include those areas so we can help. And when the last one was done, that was prior to our stormwater ordinances that we have in effect now, to where we're actually worried about detaining water from new subdivisions, from new commercial development, and trying to slow that down. So the last one was done pre stormwater ordinances. So we really didn't have anything in place prior to the last one to even start addressing those issues until now.
The difference between this one and the old one will be anticipating new development.
Correct.
More than the last one.
More than the last one, correct.
Lucy, do you have any questions for Shane? Tommy?
I do. I think you mentioned this, Shane, but just to clarify, you talked about ETJ. We've got some existing development occurring in our ETJ that does impact currently drainage issues. Those things will be looked at and addressed in the priority fashion that you mentioned. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. You know, there's multiple. You know, we have some in the south in your area, and then we also have some in the north in Tom's area that are affecting. You know, it's out in the county. The water's starting from out in the county and it's coming into the city. That's definitely, that drainage is affecting our citizens, and so all of that will be looked at and addressed.
Okay, good. Because there's a couple areas in District 1 that are some are in the city limits. Obviously, some are in the ETJ in the county. So
yes,
good.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
We have several of those areas already identified in staff's mind, and definitely wanting to look at and address.
If you need any help, you can call me, because I've gotten several calls.
You got several calls? Sir.
Tom?
As a recipient of sometimes the big flush coming from the north, you just nailed it on the ETJ and 2105. That area going north is going to, just as long as it's included here, I'm good. That's definitely part of it.
Gotcha.
Harry?
Just a real quick comment, and I think citizens understand this because all of us get calls on this every time it rains. But I think this is the area that we spend a lot of time on the phone on with citizens. So I'm glad we're headed in this direction. Get an idea of where we're coming from and what we can do for the future. So I appreciate us going forward.
Lucy? Yes, you have to come back to me. I forgot. My constituents will really get mad if I don't say something about Era Street. So we got to make sure that we address that and know that it's on the list to do. But I wanted them to know that is going to be taken care of.
All of these identified areas are going to be looked, and Arrow was actually on the last one as well too. But however, it's one of those that we will reevaluate, because and again, it's not only that the dynamics of the city have changed with housing and things like that as well too. You know, we're starting to see more intense rain events as well around here.
We hope those continue,
well.
but
yes, we do. We like those.
Thank you, Shane.
All right.
All right. With that, do I have, Lucy, you want to go ahead and make a motion?
Yes, I make a motion to approve as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second by Tommy. Do I have public comment?
Good morning, Steve Hampton. I have a question. The question is this needed to qualify for grant money? And if so, what are those grants and how much might they be? I know you're probably not prepared for exactness, but just curious. And also the other question I have is, this is for the citywide, and don't we have some of these engineering programs already in effect for like the Red Arroyo?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. We do need this master drainage plan to qualify for grants and even low-interest loans. Texas Water Development Board has recently come out with a new program to help with drainage issues, and part of that would require the information that's going to be garnered in the master drainage plan as well too. Some of those. Of course, it's all dependent upon the amount of money that's available, through the state and even the federal government at times through some of the Corps of Engineer programs that they have.
But yes, you would apply for any grant possible for any amount possible.
And actually, part of this, part of the master drainage plan, and part of the task that we have tasked HDR with is to look at possible grant funding sources that are out there that we could apply for that would directly affect specific projects based on the requirements of the grant itself. So they have been tasked within this master drainage plan update as well too with that.
I'm Red Arroyo. I'm not quite sure what the question is there, but
the Red Arroyo, there are the FEMA flood maps and things like that have. That show some of the floodways and flood patterns like that. But we have changed the dynamic of the Red Arroyo so much in the last 20 years due to all of the construction in the building and even the commercial construction and building that has gone on in the southwest part of town that the Red Arroyo is actually, that's going to be the very first thing that we concentrate on so we can actually move forward with our College Hills reconstruction design project for the street portion of it. Because the flooding on College Hills and Saw Ross and all of those areas are so bad right now that's actually going to be the first thing that HDR looks at and addresses is going to be the Red Arroyo issues that we have.
okay. Thank you. Any further public comment? With no further public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, item B passes 6-0. We will move into item C, which is a presentation of the 2018 COSA DC Annual Report. And Guy, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Mr. Valenzuela. Just to preface to my presentation this morning is that you have a copy of the annual report within your packets. And for anyone that's out there that might want a copy, I have a few copies with me. And we will also be posting this to a new website that we're going to be launching within the next week. I think you could characterize 2018, and this is a 2018 report. I realize it's July. We're actually a little over a month late in presenting this report, but we're going to change that. I think that you need more timely update on an annual report. So we're going to change our bylaws to present this much earlier in the year, probably in January of each year. But this was a rebuilding year for us.
Let me just say on that, obviously, on a quarterly basis, you update us anyway.
That's correct.
And the timing's great to change it. But without a doubt, you're updating us as we go along quarterly and as new projects come on board and you seek approval. So yes, I feel strongly that we have been kept in the loop. We're aware of the projects and their successes.
As I was saying, this was a rebuilding year for us. In many ways, we did reorganization within the City of San Angelo Development Corporation staff to align things more functionally and according to the talents of the individuals we have. We worked at improving relationships with our business partners, especially with our Chamber of Commerce that is a critical component of that since they are doing the business recruitment program in our marketing efforts. I'm just going to run through and highlight briefly some of the highlights of this. In our business retention and expansion program, we did 489 new jobs and indirect jobs were created. 130 direct and indirect jobs were retained. There's about $129.5 million of annual economic output and $7 million in capital investments as a result of the program. One of the folks that we helped out in that program was Engine Pro Machines, and we did that by buying down interest rate for them. We also partnered with Goodfellow Air Force Base, $1.5 million to help do some reconstruction of the Air Force Base. We are involved in the construction trades program with Howard College through a workforce high demands job program, $167,000 in that program. We continue to partner with our U.S. Customs and Border Protection air and marine operations, providing support to that operation. In our business factory, we had 2 tenants within our business factory during the year. 102 companies have been through their business factory since its inception. There were 13 full-time and 1 part-time employee in that. The total gross sales that were generated were $55 million, and their payrolls were $34 million. We had the 2018 business plan competition in which we recognized 1 winner, the Rock Your World Decorative Concrete LLC, and they were awarded $50,000 in a cash prize. In terms of infrastructure and capital investment, we did a total of 7 tiers agreements with a capital investment of $2.4 million. We had 4 tiers agreements in our north zone with a capital investment of $1.27 million, and 3 tiers agreements in our south zone for $1.15 million. And here some of the ones in the north that were done: Taco Bueno, the Chicken Farm Arts Center, and San Angelo Insurance. Then in our south zone, the Old Central Firehouse Bed and Brew, and then still in progress is Skyway Motel, our One East Two-Hig Partnership, and Casa Decor. In terms of capital improvements in our industrial park, we had Warren Caterpillar received their final inspection on 14.85 acres with a total investment of about $12 million. The AEP Transmission Center was on approximately 52 acres in our industrial parks, a total investment of $20 million, and then it includes $589,000 in public infrastructure. We were given an Economic Development Administration grant of $1.25 million for infrastructure improvements in Phase 2 of our industrial park. And the San Angelo Planning Commission approved the revised preliminary plat of Phase 2 of the industrial park at a meeting that they had in November. There was $588,850 Phase 2 for the industrial park for the extension of Gateway Drive and water. That included water and sewer extensions and construction of a temporary low water crossing. We also kicked off the airport master plan. Includes $121,000 for land use planning, feasibility, and infrastructure. Targeted marketing, you get to hear this report often just to highlight some of the things that happen. The targeted marketing is done through the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce. During the year, U.S. Well Services was recruited. That's 200 employees. They have about a $35.8 million annual economic yield. Eon Energy, which is actually within the ETJ in the city, is $130 million in capital investment. SMC Global, $18.4 million in annual economic yield, and then Recurrent Energy with $130 million in capital investment. In your packet, there's a lot of rhetoric about the program, the targeted industries, some of the objectives, and that sort of thing. I won't go into that, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have in regard to our 2018 performance.
The first thing I want to say is that it's amazing what can happen when people choose to work together and not create power structures and silos of power. So I thank you for coming in and making sure that everyone gets along, works well together, and produces the results that need to happen. So I think that's a major step forward. Also, obviously, this is 2018, so the continual impact of SMC Global would not be included in those numbers, and I think that they've added 2 more facilities since this report was done. So we continue to see some successes, whether it's with them or other companies, and some new transportation companies coming into San Angelo. But number one, most things don't happen unless we have great partnerships. And so I continue to say we've got to learn to work together, produce great results together, and the city benefits. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate your kind remarks, and we do have a great staff with Bob Schneeman, Shannon Scott, and Nora Navarez that are really dedicated to advancing San Angelo. And then, of course, we have great partnerships with the San Angelo Chamber, Michael Looney, Bruce Partain, and Jessica Hoyt will do an amazing job in regard to that, and then our partnerships with workforce development and others. So it's our pleasure to be able to serve that, and we appreciate the opportunity to serve San Angelo.
Keep staying partnerships. I love it. Do I have further questions or comments, Tommy?
Just a comment. I know you didn't have a lot of time, Guy, to talk through this. I encourage you all to continue your laser focus on our BREP program. If we, if SBA statistics are accurate, which I would tend to think that they are, that at a minimum 50% and could be as high as 80% of our new jobs come from existing businesses. I would encourage y'all to keep your laser focus on helping those that are already here, that have already made a contribution, but can do even more, maybe with just a little help. So I appreciate what y'all do, Guy, and keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you, and I think you're going to see some, when we do our 2019 report, some rather amazing improvements within that program. Thank you.
Do I have further questions or comments from any other council members? With none, I don't know that we take a vote on this, so it was just a presentation, and so thank you for that, and keep the partnerships and growth happening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Guy. Thank you, Guy. We will move into item D, which is consider ratifying a resolution by COSA DC authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds in an amount not to exceed $1,100,000 to provide an economic to U.S. Customs and Border Protection air and marine operations with participation by the City of San Angelo for a project authorized under Chapters 501 and 505 of the Local Government Code for Type B development corporations, and authorizing the board president to negotiate and execute a memorandum of understanding with the city providing for the economic development project terms. And Mr. Schneeman, you're on.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, Mr. Valenzuela. A beautiful day, isn't it? This project has been, I feel like, has been a long time coming, or a long time in development. But basically, it's a business retention and expansion project. So at some point, I will be handing the main part of this off to Shannon Scott, our BREP person. But through the construction portion of it, I'll be staying involved. What we're looking at is about $1.1 million in improvements for Customs and Border Patrol air and marine operations, which includes a new storage building, proposed paving, and then also some storm drainage improvements. And then one thing that's not shown on this, but it'll be on another slide, is we're also looking at some pavement replacement in this area just because it's getting a lot of wear and tear. This is a little better picture of what we're planning. And again, it's a new storage building, new pavement area, remove and replace some existing drainage along in this area. And this is important for not only for that it's the main access to the CBP AMO hangar, but it's also the main access in this direction to the Ranger Aviation paint hangar. So it gets a lot of traffic through that area, and broken and gravel and things like that are not very aircraft friendly. Project details, mobilization and pollution control about $77,000, paving and drainage $821,000, pre-engineered building at $45,000, and then it's a 10% contingency of $94,500 for a total of roughly $1,039,585. We also looked at what we're calling a deductive option. The $1 million has all of the proposed pavement in concrete, which is, for longevity purposes, is a better option. A lot of the pavement is required, and the thickness of the pavement is required because of the use of fuel trucks out there to fuel the aircraft and what have you, particularly the drone aircraft. Fuel spills don't mix very well with asphalt paving, but we have looked at an asphalt option as well, which would reduce the cost to $858,930. And these are based on engineering estimates. We'd like to put the project out to bid and then discuss with the contractor, once we've chosen a contractor, maybe some value engineering that may change some of these numbers, and maybe we can get a little better bang for our buck, so to speak. This is an incentive type project, so we are looking at 62 direct jobs at about $120,000 a year average, which is incredible for our area. It would generate an additional 39 indirect jobs. We've, according to our analysis, annual economic output would be about $22 million, and this does not. None of this includes about $2.5 million that CBP-AMO through the federal government has invested in the hangar and the equipment that they're putting in out there. So,
you want to explain CBP-AMO?
I'm sorry. That is Customs and Border Protection, Air and Marine Operations. I'd be happy to take any questions.
CBP-AMO, goes pretty fast. No one knows what that is.
I thought I mentioned it before, but maybe I didn't.
Yeah. On the direct jobs, are any of those existing jobs today as we speak?
They have about 60 now. This is anticipated through their growth plan of an additional 62 in additional pilots, technicians, contract personnel.
So there's 60. We're adding an additional 62, and are the indirect jobs the jobs that will be used for the construction and work?
Some of those will be construction jobs. Some of those will just be spin-off jobs that are a function of the impact on the local economy.
And this has all been walked through and talked through with the master plan that's being worked on, so that they are in sync, that this isn't something on the sideline that we haven't incorporated into the master plan.
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay. Do I have questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. But
You have a comment?
Definitely concrete is the way to go with that heavy aircraft and fuel trucks. That's my opinion on that.
Yes, sir. That's our belief. We just like to try to get the price down as low as we can.
Do I have further questions or comments? Then with that, do I have a motion?
To approve.
I'm going to have Lane with a motion, second with Harry, and I'm going to ask for public comment. With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
We'll move into item E, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving PD 1906, a rezoning from the low-rise multifamily residential RM1 zoning district to the planned development PD zoning district to allow retail sales and service users and offices with type 1 outdoor storage being 1.425 acres located at 3824 Green Meadow Drive. John?
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. As you mentioned, this is a planned development. You can see the location there off of Green Meadow. This right up here is the old Kmart site. This is largely residential, and that's one of the reasons that this comes to you as a PD, to help provide some restrictions that ensure that it will not have a negative impact on those that housing across the street. But as you can see, and maybe on another map it'll show up better, but this is largely, north of Green Meadow is largely a commercial area, so this type of commercial activity we believe is appropriate. This is in our future land use plan as commercial. However, as you can see here, it is currently zoned for apartments, multifamily. And so this would basically change the zoning to the PD, but the PD is based on a commercial underlying zone. Just a few pictures of the area. There's the subject property there in the foreground. You can see some of the homes and then apartments back there in the background. Again, the vacant, you can see the vacant Kmart site there in the background as well. And then here is a better look looking at the homes immediately across the street. This is a proposed concept plan for the development. You can see that it's an office warehouse. Largely the outdoor storage would be very limited. Most of the storage and activity would be inside the building. And again, that's to help protect those neighbors across the street, both from noise, visual impacts, those kinds of things from that kind of outdoor storage. This is a sample of a project that these folks, I don't know if they did this one, but it's something that what they're intending theirs to look like. So again, we think across from these homes, that is a nice looking facility that would be there across the street. Just some reasons for the approval. Most of these I've mentioned already. It is in a largely commercial area. The PD will help protect the homes that are across the street. They are planning a nice front facade, again, to help make it look nice for the neighborhood. We did send out our notifications to the surrounding property owners, 2 in favor and none in opposition. Staff does recommend approval, as did the Planning Commission unanimously at their June meeting. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Here's a list of the conditions. I won't read through them, but basically, as I've described throughout, they're conditions to help ensure protection for those neighbors.
So is there anything in a planned development that would be opposed project that residential homeowners would have a problem with?
No, again, by doing it as a planned development, you are approving their proposed concept plan. If they came back and decided to do something else, the base zoning is CG, but if they came back to do something that wasn't this sort of office development, they would have to come back to you all because the PD is specific to their concept plan that they've shown.
Take a vote, we're specifically taking a vote on what this project is.
Correct. And that's
not just the zoning issue, but the project.
Right, and that's a difference with a planned development versus normal zoning. Normally, if we were zoning at CG, just straight CG, then they could go out and do anything that's allowed in the CG district. But with the planned development, we can restrict it both based on the conditions in the ordinance, but also the concept plan that they've proposed.
Okay, do I have further questions from council? Then do I have a motion for a motion and a second by Lane? Any public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving item E, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0. We'll now move into item F. It's a first reading and public hearing for an ordinance for CP 19-01, an amendment to the City of San Angelo's comprehensive plan, changing certain lands from the neighborhood center future land use to industrial future land use, being 8.98 acres located generally southeast of the intersection of Houston Hart, Frontage Road, and Smith Boulevard. And 2, an ordinance for Z19-09, a rezoning from general commercial CG to light manufacturing ML, being 8.98 acres generally southeast of the intersection of Houston Hart Expressway, Frontage Road, and Smith Boulevard. John?
Thank you. As you mentioned in there, this is changing the comprehensive plan from neighborhood center, which is a commercial district, to industrial, and as well as changing the zoning. And you can see on these maps here, this corner was carved out for possible commercial, I think given the fact that it's at the freeway and a major roadway, that the idea was that could be a commercial location. But as you see here, everything back around it is in the plan for industrial. So we think expanding that industrial into that area makes sense. And likewise, action would change the zoning. You can see back here the Ethicon site, large site already zoned for the light manufacturing. This would just extend that zoning into these two properties right there. The property in question is this property was the applicant, and so that's the property with immediate development plans. Based on discussions with this property owner, they were good with including their property as well to make the whole area so we wouldn't have industrial here with a commercial between that and the other industrial. Just some pictures of the area. It is undeveloped currently. You can see the freeway there in the background. This is looking to the south. Immediately south of this is storage units, again, which we think is appropriate for industrial right next to that. That creates something of a buffer. But then there are apartments across the street and down a little bit. So you can see that's one of the things we considered was would this particular type of facility and zoning be a negative impact to those apartments. And given the overall nature of the area, we thought that this was appropriate for that location. Again, I've mentioned many of these. The applicant is expanding their business based on a new contract with HEB, so they need a lot more space to do their business of making sausage, and so this gives them a site where they can do that larger facility. We did send out our notifications, did not receive any responses in favor or in opposition. Staff does recommend approval of both the plan amendment and the rezoning. The Planning Commission approved both as well unanimously. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have any? Lucy?
Yes, John, when you said you sent the 6 letters, on the attachment it said 2018. Was that a typo?
It listed the year as 2018. I assume so, yeah. I guess I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I was reading it last night and I saw it was 2018. I thought, well, surely that was a typo because,
Is that on the notices that sent out?
Mm-hmm. The 6 notices.
It listed the date of the public hearing as 2018?
No, it said the 6 notices mailed, and it said 2018 because it had 0 in opposition. I don't know.
On the staff report? Yeah, that
I was
must have
just
been
wondering, but you did send the 6 notices this year.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
that's what I needed to know also. The other thing that I read was something about how they might be able to contain a smell that might be produced from this sausage factory, like in the surrounding area. Do you know what y'all are going to do about that?
Yeah, we don't really have.
Do you have any kind of stipulations that you'll put or anything that will be required them to do that?
We don't. Again, as I mentioned on the last case, a plan development could possibly address some of those issues, but with straight zoning, we're just allowing industrial zoning and anything that would be allowed in there. I think they would, it would be in their best interest, and then they probably have something in place to address things like smells, but and then we may, I'm not sure, we may have something in the city's just overall nuisance ordinance that if smells are so bad that could be a nuisance action. But in terms of the zoning and what we're talking about today, there's no limitations other than just whatever would be generally applicable.
Well, we know that they exist as a business today, and so the question mark is, has there been any issues with smell in their existing location? Because this is not a new business, this is an expansion of a business.
No, not that we've heard of. And in fact, what you'll see, I think, in a couple of meetings from now that went to the Planning Commission this week was a similar business in another location, and there were some similar questions with that. And again, that facility has a house right next to it, and they had no concerns there.
Well, I don't have any, that's fine. I just need to ask these questions because, as usual, we're always trying to help the local business owners, and especially it's a benefit to the city when they're able to expand. So I really don't have anything else to comment. I approve the.
On the notices being mailed, can you show on that map the distance of which the notice would have been mailed out and who it would have been involved?
It's 200 feet, and so it's all of the properties that are colored in sort of that blue color. Oh, let me go back. We just didn't show the actual boundary, but it includes all of those properties.
So nothing across Houston Hart.
Correct.
All right. Any further questions or comments? All right, Lucy, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I move to approve as presented. Second.
Of the motion and a second, do we have any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0. I guess did we need to take a vote on item F1 versus F2? Or we read them together, but the question mark is, does one vote cover both 1 and 2? Okay. All right, item G, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving the abandonment and vacation of a 15-foot wide by 200-foot long 0.0685 acres, which is 3,000 square feet, public alley located south of West Beauregard Avenue, north of West Colorado Street, between South Tyler Street and South Polk Street.
Thank you. Again, John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. I'm going to be real quick with this one. You saw it a couple of meetings ago. We had to make some minor modifications to the actual ordinance language, and so we're bringing it back to you with that revised ordinance language. But the way we presented it last time has not changed. There's no change in the substance of what's being requested. There were just some modifications we needed to make to the actual adopting ordinance. So again, this is in that area of the Concho collision. You did the rezoning at that same meeting where you looked at this abandonment. And so it'd be basically abandoning this alley, which is across the street from their main facility.
And notifications were sent out to everyone about the abandonment of the alley, and there were no oppositions?
Correct. Yes, and in fact, yes, all of the properties that would be affected by that were notified. In fact, they're all in agreement and working with Concho Collision. The two properties on the front, or I guess that's the north side, are actually owned by Concho Collision, so they'll be taking that. The other property owners will have the ability to take their half if they choose to, or they could transfer that to Concho Collision. If they don't want to mess with it, then Concho Collision could take that over. And so Concho Collision will be working that out with those neighboring property owners.
Okay.
This is recommended by staff as well as recommendation by the Planning Commission with our standard list of comments, including replatting the property, paying the fee that's established by the fee ordinance, as well as retaining an easement because there are some utilities within that existing alley. Happy to answer any questions.
Do I have questions from council? Move for approval, a second.
Second.
Second by Tommy. Public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion passes 6-0. We will move into item H, which is presentation regarding the proposed fiscal year 2020 Convention and Visitors Bureau budget. Diane, you're on.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council, City Manager, City staff, and citizens. Thank you for allowing me to be here today to present. As majority of the audience here knows, the Convention and Visitors Bureau is a division of the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce. And our role is to enhance the quality of life for the citizens of San Angelo through tourism, marketing, and promotion. Whoops, went the wrong way, sorry. So to explain how we are funded, unlike the Chamber of Commerce, which is funded through membership dollars and economic development is funded separately, we are fully funded by local hotel tax dollars paid by visitors to San Angelo. So 7% is the hotel tax rate in San Angelo and 6% is the state rate. And it is a designated fund, which means it has to be spent a certain way, is not allowed to be spent, for example, on roads, that kind of thing. So in order to utilize these funds, we have to meet two criteria. Criteria number one is first, every expenditure must directly enhance and promote tourism and the convention and hotel industry. And then second, every expenditure of the hotel occupancy tax must clearly fit into one of 9 statutorily provided categories for expenditure of local hotel occupancy tax revenues. So our proposed budget request for 2020, and I do want to share that we do have a 20-member CVB advisory board, and they did vote to approve the proposed budget. The current budget is in a 3-year contract, or was in a 3-year contract and it extended a year, is $865,000 per year. And there has been no increase since 2016. And the proposed budget for 2020 is $1,012,635. 5% of that would be applied to operating expenses, and included in that are potential 3% raise for staff, which is not guaranteed, and then the rest of that is for the rent of our facility, which has gone up a touch, and then also for our storage unit. And I don't believe there's much more in that as far as operating expenses. And then 95% would be applied to marketing and advertising, which is what our role is to do. Wanted to give you some occupancy and ADR, average daily rate comparison, from 2016 to currently, or 2019 that we have. And so if you look at that, this is based on 33 properties and 2,815 rooms. This is from the Smith Travel Report, which is done by the Texas Tourism Office under the Governor's Office. You will see that occupancy has continued to rise over the past 4 years, as well as ADR. ADR, average daily rate, is up. It's goes down and up throughout this year for 2019, but it's pretty much maintaining the same rate. As far as CVB sales and servicing activity, based on our booking history, requesting additional funds in convention servicing and visitors and travel marketing, which includes familiarization and site tours for servicing for groups. So in 2017, we had 82 definite groups and meetings in San Angelo. We had 78 in 2018 and 86 in 2019. And please note, these are bookings that we were directly involved with. So that doesn't include some things that may have happened in our community that we did not have direct impact on. Our social media efforts, this is something that we had not been doing a substantial amount of in 2017 when I arrived. So wanted to share this, that we've had a 58% increase in our users since 2017. Our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram all have seen definite impacts, a 52% increase in our viewers since 2018, and no presence prior to 2017 on YouTube. And we've also got a presence on LinkedIn and also on Pinterest. In print and digital marketing, we're looking to increase frequency in 2020 in targeted publications, including, but they are not limited to, True West Magazine, Texas Music Magazine, and Bus Tour publications. So we were in 30 print publications and 6 tourism websites in 2017, 34 in print and 7 tourism sites in 2018, and currently 26 print publications and 8 tourism websites in 2019. As far as public relations is concerned, we're seeking to focus greater outreach on travel media, film, and music industry. We recently received our Texas Music Friendly designation. We also received our Film Friendly designation, and we're working closely with travel media, from bloggers to influencers to writers. So we had 30 stories produced in print or online from CVB marketing efforts between 2016 and 2018. 2 shows aired on Texas Country Reporter in 2018, that should say in 2018, my apologies. And then we've provided assistance for TV shows shot in San Angelo to air on Oxygen Network, Animal Planet, and the Cooking Channel. And we are also working with other film organizations through the Texas Film Office to see if we can find locations for feature films. Meeting and consumer trade, looking to increase presence in targeted markets in 2020, also requires an increase in promotional items and convention and travel trade. So we were represented in 7 trade shows in 2017, 17 in 2018, and 19 in 2019. So that requires staff to go, they overnight, they do sometimes entertain their clients when they're out to make sure that we are having direct face-to-face meetings with those folks. And then fulfillment, looking to increase quantity of rack cards and produce a more detailed trifold brochure for 2020 that would be more included in our local welcome bags to have a little more detail of what there is to see and do in San Angelo. The rack card currently goes to locations all over Texas, also in Louisiana and Arkansas, and Oklahoma, and those go into hotels, those go into attractions that you might see those rack cards when you walk into those places. So in 2017, we distributed 30,000 brochures. In 2018, 130,000, and right now we have distributed almost 146,500, and we've now printed another 10,000 rack brochures because we are still producing and making those disappear. So major accomplishments to date: the Texas Music Friendly designation, we just received that from the Texas Music Office, which is under the Governor's Office. We were ranked number 2 in True West Magazine's top 10 Western towns in the U.S. in 2019. The San Angelo Visitor Center and San Angelo State Park were named Best of by American Bus Association this year. The Texas Film Friendly designation, which we acquired in 2018. DiscoverSanAngelo.com was named Judge's Choice Best Website at the TACVB, which is the Texas Association of Convention and Visitors Bureau's annual conference in 2018. 7 stores were named Best of in Texas on ShopAcrossTexas.com. 1 was named Best of the Best in 2018, and we do marketing with Shop Across Texas. Our sales manager, Amy Roberts, was named Desk and Derrick Rookie of the Year in 2018, and I serve on both the Texas Association of Convention and Visitors Bureau Board of Directors and the Texas Travel Industry Association Board of Directors, so representing San Angelo in that light. So that is my presentation, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Lane?
I have a question. Diane, are y'all strictly funded by hot tax, or do y'all have any other revenue streams?
Strictly funded by hot tax.
Lucy?
No, ma'am.
Harry?
Yes. Diane, you talked about the 9 areas by state statute that allows hot funds to be used. Do you want to expand on that a little bit so
certainly be happy
people
to.
watching can understand?
Sure. Well, the first criteria is every expenditure must directly enhance and promote tourism and convention and hotel industry. So if we are seeking out or anyone is utilizing those funds, the hotel piece has to be a part of that in the convention center. So or the convention center. As far as criteria for number 2, this is pretty detailed, so I do have this for you, so I'll share it with you. The first criteria is the convention and visitor centers. So we are in a visitor center. This is our convention center, but more than 50% of the bookings at a convention center must directly promote tourism and the hotel and convention industry. So I want to share that with you. Number 2 is convention registration. So this is cost of materials for registration for guests. So we might have to occasionally pay someone to actually work a registration booth for a group, or for name tags, welcome bags, notepads, pens, those kinds of things that we provide at registration. As far as the advertising, number 3 is advertising in the city. So ads, promotion, online, print, billboards, that could be a number of different things. Promotion of the arts. Arts also must promote tourism and the convention and hotel industry, and no more than 15% of the annual tax dollars can be utilized or used for that. Historic restoration and preservation. I can tell you that 50% max on the historical preservation for cities under 125,000 can be applied, but only if they are not funding a convention center. So that kind of negates some of that piece, because we are funding this council has funded the convention center. Number 6, sporting events in cities less than 1 million in population. So promotional expenses related to a sporting event that substantially increases economic activity can be utilized. For example, we hosted the NJCAA Region 5 National or Region 5 baseball tournament recently at ASU. We've hosted USSSA. But the majority of those teams must be hotel guests and visitors to San Angelo. Number 7, enhancing or upgrading of existing sports facilities. Currently, this does not apply to San Angelo. If it did, any funding to facilities would have to show matching hotel revenue based on improvements. So if you spent $400,000, this is the example they give in the law, $400,000 on improvement at the Texas State Sports Complex, you would have to show that $400,000 in hotel tax dollars were matched in that. If not, you have to return whatever that funding is that was not matched. Number 8, tourist transportation systems to transport visitors from hotels to the city center, convention center, other hotels and attractions. This does not allow for transportation of the general public. So, for example, our convention center, we may have people here that are staying at our hotels that are not adjacent to the property. And so we occasionally will offer transportation to get those folks to and from, or if they have an off-site event that is not at the hotel, we will pay to do that. So we have done that as an incentive, a visitor event incentive. And then finally, directional signage. Funding for directional signs and promotional signage is allowed by this law. And I do want to also add, there are 3,300 travel and tourism jobs in San Angelo in our industry here. And if not for visitor spending, $546 would have to be paid by every household in taxes every year. So the more visitors we have, the more overnights we have, the better off our citizens are as far as their taxes.
Question, Tommy?
I think I know the answer to this, but you're the expert, not I. How do you measure the return on investment? Is it merely an increase in the tax itself, or in your industry? How would you measure on this requested increase? How would you measure the return on that investment?
Well, I will tell you that because we are a marketing industry, it's the investment in our future. Primarily, that is how if you're not telling the story, if you're not getting the word out, you're not going to see people come in. And so we do look at those tax dollars pure and simply as we go in, and we do have a database that provides a calculation in order to see what those dollars look like per group as they come in.
I have a couple questions. One is, we are not hiring any more staff, right?
No, ma'am.
And number 2, the 3% raise is not guaranteed.
That's correct.
So that doesn't necessarily happen.
That's correct.
And then number 3, my question is, I know currently that there are some hotels that are receiving a lot of good business because of the oil and gas industry. Obviously, with sales tax dollars tightening up and people such as Midland, Odessa, Abilene, and San Angelo are not getting the increases that we had in the previous years. The question mark is the following. By approving $147,000, which I think this is increase, we need to be cognizant of if, in fact, the hotel industry starts to tighten up because fewer hotel rooms are being occupied by the oil and gas industry employees, we might not see the increase in 2018 or 2019, 2020 that we've currently seen. And so how do we work with you to ensure that if we approve the additional increase requested and the hot dollars don't meet the plan, how do we work with you to ensure that we don't negatively impact the city?
I think what I would say the difference between us and Midland and Odessa especially is we are a much more diverse market. We do have the corporate and government groups that come in through Goodfellow, through the city, through what we do with economic development, and we try to work closely with them. So there are other entities that come in and stay in our hotels rather than just the oil and gas. And so I think we have a much better, broader audience as far as our hotel tax dollars are concerned. And I would also add that we work in our sales team to look at various niches that can fit the need that we are looking for. So, For example, Susanna is focusing highly on the group tour market and also the international travelers, which we have not done in the past. Amy is working on more on that government and corporate group. So in fact, she's stolen quite a bit of business out of Midland that comes here because of oil and gas. And so some of that is coming here, but I don't think we're primarily dependent on that. I think we have, again, a much more diverse piece. And the other thing I would also urge the audience to also understand is when we say tourism, a lot of people just think of visitors on a weekend and vacationers. But our industry is travel and tourism. So when you think of people coming in on a Sunday through Thursday at our airport, those are business travelers. So business is conducted in our community, and so a lot of that concern, and I do understand it, I believe we can overcome a lot of that just simply because of the diversity of our market.
What happens? Tell me what happens, Tina or Michael Dane, if in fact because when we approve a dollar increase and the dollars don't happen in that fund, how do we approach this?
So, and Tina Diersky, Director of Finance. Good morning, Council. Mr. Valenzuela, Mayor. So that's part of the reason why we try to keep a fund balance in that fund in the event that we do have a difficult year with hotel occupancy tax, because it is a volatile revenue source. We do try to keep a fund balance in that fund in the event that we do need to dip into it in a particular year. And that being said, of course, your finance department is always monitoring the budgets for both revenue and expenditures. And if the first sign that we see of any alarm, we would, of course, bring that to the city manager and then to you as the city council to make any decisions that we might need to make going forward for that particular fiscal year.
Okay, thank
Mayor,
you. Yes,
if I could,
Michael.
your question is good overall management of the occupancy tax in total. Good questions, and Tina will cover that in the next agenda item. That'll be an opportunity to further consider what I think is your thought process now. How do we manage that overall? On this particular item, this appears to be approximately a 17% increase. And so I think the question would be, what, if anything, will we see different from the CVB as a result of this increase, this proposed increase?
Well, one of the things I would say is frequency in our marketing, because currently we have certain areas that we are not doing a lot of targeted marketing on because we just simply don't have the funds. For example, in a magazine like Texas Highways, they have a 2.5 million page views per year in that online, and we have a total of 5 banner ads. We would increase, of course, those banner ads so we can increase that frequency, as well as in the magazine, which has 180,000 monthly subscribers. We run 6 ads currently, with which we get a great discount on, but we would want to increase that readership so that, again, more eyeballs are on what we do and more about San Angelo. Ride Texas and ridetexas.com, that's a new niche market that we're looking at just because of Visit Big Bend. We see a lot of travelers, specifically on motorcycles, going on I-10 and I-20, but they haven't gone down the middle. And that's one of the things we're working with Ride Texas to include us on that map so that we can capture some of that market. And these are not just motorcycle enthusiasts, but that's a good significant number of them. But that's a new market that we believe we can strongly attract the Big Bend visitor, just simply because we have a similar nature-based tourism product that could be beneficial and they would enjoy it while they're here. We have other things like True West Magazine. Currently, we've only done, I think, 2 print ads and 3 digital this past year. We would love to increase that based on our new True West designation. That is a way to get more information out to them. And then because we have our new music-friendly designation, we really want to hit the markets like Texas Music Magazine to get that information out, to promote the arts in our community, because we do believe the performing arts, the visual arts are very strong, and particularly for that magazine, it's the performing arts. And so we want to encourage people to come to San Angelo and come to our facilities for concerts, for whatever that might look like in the music business. And then in turn, I say this often, and I take it from my colleague Mara Gass with the Irving Convention and Visitors Bureau and San Angelo native. It all starts with a visit. If we're not getting our name out there, businesses are not seeing our name either. And so we are basically the marketing arm for the city of San Angelo as far as visitor spending is concerned. And so we want to continue to raise that awareness because that is important in getting the information out that says we have a great quality of life for businesses who might want to move here.
And then let me ask one more question. If, for example, we say that we would approve the request for $147,000, can that be done as a one-time increase and not a solid number as an ongoing number?
The next time, in the next item?
I'm asking them.
Are
Tina?
you asking if
Yes.
that would just be for a one-year period?
Yes, instead of establishing it as the new base. That's what I'm asking.
So the agreement that the city has with the CVB currently expires on 12/31 of this year, and that is when the new contract amount would begin. And so if council wanted to direct that, then that would be included in that contract that we renew on January 1 of 2020. And then I guess that contract would just be limited to a one-year term, if that's how you wanted to direct.
I'm very nervous about the impact on hotels right now and of slowing economy. So I want to make sure that we don't get ourselves in trouble financially. My comments are not relative to how much I support CVB. I think they're doing you all doing a great job, and I think the city benefits from it. But in a big picture world, I want to make sure I protect the city and make sure that we don't sign up for a contract that does not have flexibility and does not reflect a trend line in the hotel occupancy numbers.
And the benefit of what you're saying as well, Mayor, if you do it on a one-year basis, you can actually take a look at what the impact really was. Because it's really difficult. The question that I had for Diane is, what is your projection for hotel stays and tourism activity? And actually, if you do this over a year, you have an actual indication of what the impact was. Because the question would be, for every dollar of marketing that is spent, what is the return? And Tommy talked about that a little bit a while ago. But a lot of times we don't know that impact. We don't know what the oil and gas market's going to do, if it's going to level off or drop off. So all that impacts tourism as well, as far as the hotel stays. But on my end, that's something that, if anything, Mayor, if you do that over a year, it gives you a better indication during the year what that impact was. So the following year, y'all might say, hey, this is wonderful. Let's do another 147,000, or let's do a little bit more. So I agree with that. Unless, I know, Diane, it's probably unfair to say, what is your projection for how many more hotel stays we'll have and what have you. But I think doing it this way, it'll give us a better indication.
And I also would request that as it relates to raises, that it stay in line with whatever we make a decision with in terms of the city. So if the city gives a maximum 2% for the budget, that would be in line with what you do.
Yes, ma'am. We
And
follow what the city
So just
city
to
does,
be
so
very
yes.
clear on that. So everybody is treated fairly.
Correct.
Those are my questions. Do I have further questions or comments? Tom, I see a head.
Comment also.
Okay.
You're just looking for better tools, more tools.
Correct.
I mean, and I agree with you, need them, and it's key to getting people in here. I think the energy industry subsidizes a lot of what we do. We're going to see it. We'll never be as affected directly as, say, Midland, Odessa is, and we'll never see the upticks or the downticks they do. But I get what you're doing, Diane, and going back to Tina, I think we'll discuss this. I think the fund budget of the excess balance or what we need to cover your 17% is there. I'm all for going and doing what you're asking to do here. I think it's very important. You got 100% support out of us and at the rodeo. We think you've done a wonderful job. I see the mayor's point. I just hope we're further enough on the fringe of it that it doesn't become a problem, but we're good to go.
You just need the flexibility.
Absolutely.
We understand that we're the stewards of the public funds, and so we want to make sure that we are spending them in the way that this council wants us to spend them.
Lane, you wanted to make a comment?
And I know this whole discussion that we've been having, I know consistency is what we've been trying to do in setting a set budget, but just like everything else, every other department. But I think this is the downfall of our discussion of not going to a percentage base, is we're always having to monitoring how much, at what level are we using that instead of fluctuating. I think that's the only downfall for this, is if you have a percentage based, you know exactly what level that is with what amount is coming in instead of saying,
yeah. Okay. Further comments from council? Do I have a motion from council that might be included?
It was just a presentation.
Oh, well, you're done. Thank you very much. Tina, you're on. Let's see. Let me read it first, I guess. Discussion and direction regarding hotel occupancy tax budget allocations for fiscal year 2020.
All right, good morning again. Tina Dersky, Director of Finance. So this item is to kind of have a discussion about the hotel occupancy tax, how it's performing, and what our allocations will be for the budget for next year. So this first slide is just giving you a picture of how the tax has performed over the last several years and to show the fluctuations and volatility that are involved with the hotel occupancy tax. We are projecting, if we project flat for 2019, that meaning that the last 3 months of the fiscal year remain exactly as they were last year, we would project an ending revenue source of $2.8 million for 2019. This slide is just showing you how the fund is performing in the current year, and I'll just give you a minute to look at that. We have the FY19 budget compared with the June year-to-date numbers, and you can see that revenue is performing very well. Expenditures are a little higher than the 75%. That is, of course, based on the percentage that goes to civic events and SACAC, or San Angelo Cultural Affairs Council, because those are percentage-based. Of course, if the tax revenue is higher, then those expenditures going out are also going to be a little higher. Do you have any questions on this slide? No. Okay, and this is showing the actual revenues and expenditures that came into the fund and went out of the fund for fiscal years 2015 through 2018. So this is the reason that the title says Civic Events / Hot Fund is because in fiscal years 15, 16, and 17, we still had civic events combined into the same fund with hotel occupancy tax, Mid-year in 2018, we actually moved Civic Hot out of the Civic Events Fund into its own fund so that we could more closely monitor that revenue source, being that it is restricted. And so for 15, 16, and 17, they were still combined, but mid-year in 18, we actually moved Hot out into its own separate fund. So with this slide, we're just trying to show that, for one thing, the operating expenditure target for civic events has remained relatively stable from fiscal years 15 to 18. That's because city staff sets the expenditure target for that fund. And so while there may have been extra revenue coming into the fund because of the percentage-based amount, their expenditure target was required to remain relatively stable. There were some slight fluctuations for things like personnel increases or decreases, that kind of thing. But as far as what they're allowed to spend on their operating budget, that remained relatively stable over those 4 years.
We dig down into the numbers, meaning the following, that when we establish the dollar amounts, are we looking at percent of occupancy and average hotel rates, or are we just simply looking at last year was this, we've been on a trend line of X percent increase, so based off of that percent increase, we add that to last year's number, and that's our new number? Or how do we dig down deep into these numbers to make sure that we have a relatively reliable number?
On the revenue side, the revenue is mostly hotel occupancy tax, of course, and so that's just based strictly on the 48% of whatever we budget for hotel occupancy tax. We have, for the most part, tried to remain very conservative with budgeting for hotel occupancy tax revenue because, like I said, it is volatile. We want to make sure that we're able to meet the obligations that we have set for that fund. And so as far as the expenditure targets, those are set just like any other city department, where what you had last year is what you get this year as far as your total expenditure target for your entire fund. That being said, we do have forms that are called target increase requests, and so if a department does need to increase that expenditure target, they are able to ask city manager and then city council to increase their budget if there is a legitimate need to do so.
So are we looking at civic events, or are we looking at the hot tax fund?
This is why it's a little confusing, because like I said, in 2018 we moved it and separated it out. So for those first 3 years, that was the Civic Events Fund, where all of the hotel occupancy tax came into that fund and then went back out to other stakeholders, while the remainder remained in that fund to operate civic events. And because of that confusion and the inability to closely monitor the hotel occupancy tax, is why we made the decision in 2018 to separate them so that it's more clearly stated in your blue book and your financial statements what's hotel occupancy tax versus what's civic events.
So how do we look at apples to apples in 2018 compared?
I'm not understanding your question, sorry.
Meaning if they were combined in 2015 through 2018, and we separated them in 2018, where's my apple-to-apple comparison?
For FY18, we did pull out the other stakeholders. You can see there that there's obviously not enough expenditures going out to have funded those other stakeholders. So we did separate that out in 2018 from what the actuals were. So this is an apples-to-apples comparison.
Okay.
So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention with this slide is that there was a contribution to the fund balance in each of those years. Again, just showing that even though they may have had more revenue coming into the fund, they were not allowed to spend it unless they went to City Council for authorization. And so on this next slide, I have some examples of how that happened. So let me go back to this first slide. So you can see in 2015, for example, they had a contribution to fund balance of $614,000 because that was a good year for hotel occupancy tax. And then because of that, they were able to come to City Council and ask to do some additional projects. And so they came to City Council and asked to do projects in the amount of $458,000, which were approved, and then still leaving an additional contribution to fund balance of just over $150,000. And so this slide's kind of showing you where, while there may have been additional revenues coming into the fund, they still were not allowed to access those revenues unless the City Council authorized those expenditures. Any questions on this slide?
And do we have an ongoing hot list, if you will, of projects that are needed for our facilities? Because obviously our ability to attract tourism and hotel occupancy is based off of the quality of our assets or our facilities.
Yes, ma'am. If you'll recall, a few council meetings ago, we did bring to you some ideas. The only two that we currently have in our capital improvement plan right now were for Fort Concho and for the River Stage. And so we brought those two concepts to you. We have city staff in those departments and divisions working on those ideas, and we will be bringing those back to you in the near future.
Finishing up some of those prior ones. You know, recently we've just brought back to you because they completed a slate of projects and they didn't use all the money. So council authorized them to go ahead and use the remainder of those dollars for a few other things. Currently, the staff is working with Al, our architect, on the new plan of list of items that will be coming to you. They're working on some I think y'all are aware of at the River Stage. We've got some bathroom issues there need to be upgraded and just maintained. So you'll be getting that list in the near future.
Continue.
Okay, now we're switching gears a little bit. This is strictly the Civic Events Fund and what we're proposing for their budget for next year, for fiscal year 2020. So we worked with the department director and the division manager and kind of sat down with them and saw where they might be able to increase their own venue revenue, their own advertising revenue, and then to see how much left they might need additionally to do some work and continue some maintenance and projects at the Civic, or within the Civic Events Fund, excuse me. So what we're currently requesting from hotel occupancy tax for the Civic Events Fund is $1,008,050. The current year budget for that is $1,076,000, so that is a slight decrease to what they're requesting from the hotel occupancy tax. And of course,
Decrease?
A decrease from the current year budget, yes. It was $1,076,000. So the amount needed from hotel occupancy tax is actually less this year because they've also offset that a little bit by increasing their own venue revenue budgets by about $65,000. And so with that, even though they're decreasing their amount requested from hotel occupancy tax, they are still going to be able to try to set aside down here the restricted facility use fee. And so that's a concept that we've discussed with them. Of course, they do have a ticket fee on each of their tickets, and an idea that we've or a concept that we've discussed with them is just to try to set aside that facility use fee and designate it so that it is only available for use on maintenance and projects within the needs that they have in the fund.
So the hot tax money that we're requesting, that is based off of a base amount or as a percentage?
That is a flat amount. We sat down with them. They added about, I think, $40,000 to their budget in certain venues just for maintenance because that has
No additional personnel.
no,
'Cause
there's
we
no
can't be
additional
adding.
personnel included here, although they have a request in for one more staff member due to increased volume or increased activity that they're seeing.
Yes, but the increase, just to rehearse some numbers, is that in past years, they've done a lot more than the plan is right now with fewer people. So if I think generally speaking, Daniel, we are not looking at adding additional personnel to the City of San Angelo staff.
Not at this point. There have been some requests, Mayor, and we'll discuss that when we get to the budget part of it. So, I mean, to the general budget
workshops.
portion. Correct. So
Yes,
the
ma'am.
workshops are
Yes,
coming
sir.
this coming month as well. So we'll have that discussion. But at this point, that is something that City Council will decide as well.
In general, this does not include it, and the way we see it is any of those requests would go, just like any other department request would go in with the budget workshop discussions.
We're not looking to increase the payroll of the City of San Angelo in additional staff.
If they go over
Yes,
revenue,
Blaine, what would you like to ask?
if they have over revenue for their venue, can they put that towards their facilities?
So that's another concept that we discussed, and I think that they could either designate the restricted facility use fee that's on each ticket, and that's the $133,000, or they might be able to
increase that.
retain the revenue over expenditure in the venues, but we could do both, but of course it would require a much larger contribution of hotel occupancy tax revenue to the fund in order to be able to set aside both of those amounts.
Say that again. If they go over revenue of 600,000, you would increase hot also? Is that what you
No.
just said? Sorry.
No, that's okay. I thought you were asking a different question. I thought you were asking about what revenue over expenditure in the venues.
No, just the venue itself for revenue. If they go over their 600,000,
Okay.
can they apply that? They get to keep that and apply that towards their facilities?
Any revenue over expenditure in that fund, no matter where it comes from, will go to the fund balance in the Civic Events Fund.
And so
And then it can only be accessed by action of council.
that's what's happened in years past. You can see they brought in additional revenue, so that just offset and you used less hot money is what happened. So what she's saying is it'll just go back
It helps
into-
to supplement their operations, basically, and so there's less hot money that's needed for their actual operating budget.
Is there any other that we decrease their hot fund because they do better? What other departments do we do that in?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
We did it a few years back with the CVB contract. It was on a percentage basis, and the last year that it was on a percentage basis, it exceeded $1 million. And hot tax was on its way up, and we were seeking not to just dole those dollars out, but to control the growth in those expenditures. And so we did that with the CVB then, and I believe the contract was a little over $800,000 or
It actually
$820,000.
originally started at $795,000 when that first year went from over $1 million based on a percentage to $795,000.
Because what we really have got to do is make sure that we are keeping monies, a significant dollar amount, to improve our facilities, because no one can have success without these facilities being improved. And once we give it out, it's pretty hard to pull it back. So we need to make sure that we're protecting the facilities by forcing dollars into facility improvement. And if I look back,
and again, any surplus,
facility improvements,
it has
but
to.
I just don't understand why we would, I guess, penalize by taking away hot funds if we have a set amount for every other department. They have a set amount for hot funds of $1.8 million. And if they go over 50,000 on the 600,000, why would we decrease 50,000 off that million?
You could take if they bring in additional revenue than what is actually budgeted, council could say, if you bring in additional over that, you have hot dollars coming in at this amount, you have revenue budgeted at X. If you bring in more, that could go into your balance that is for maintenance, designated specifically for civic events. If you don't do that, then it reverts back to the hot fund, which at the end of the day, you still have control over that. We've brought projects to you in the past saying, we've got $500,000 worth of projects. Can you allocate some of those additional hot dollars to do that? So you will still have that authority, whichever way you place it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all based off of facility needs.
But I wouldn't disagree if we decrease the hot funds just because they.
Well, I think I hear something that may be a misunderstanding. Councilman, if they bring in, for example, $650,000 instead of the $600,000 in venue and advertising revenue, the budget is still set for the hot revenue, and still the 1008050 will be transferred over into civic events in this year. The possibility of reducing it would only change if council changed it, either in a budget amendment during the year or in a subsequent year's new budget.
Always fluid.
So if they bring in 650 next year, they're not going to get 50 less in occupancy tax. Does that make sense?
Why would, because if I look at history on this, back in fiscal year 2017, in venue dollars, they actually brought in $659,000. So we're not even back, even though our hotel tax has gone up consistently since then. Our venue dollars have not gone back and matched the height of venue dollars, which was $659,064 in fiscal year 2017.
What I just want to prevent is to say that, well, this department is actually using less hot funds, but they still have the needs of the facilities, so let's decrease that, give it to this, and then it's just a never-ending fight of.
So here we are, we're still planning it at $600,000.
Right.
And that's.
I'm talking just the hot fund part.
No, yeah, and I'm not.
Yeah.
So that's separately.
Okay.
Because I'm just talking about
Just
venue.
revenue advertising.
Because if you look at it and you say, did the venues, or did we spend let me clarify the question. The $684,951, was that income from renting out the venues, or was that advertising dollars to try to get the venues rented?
This number?
Yeah.
So that is mostly venue revenue. I think about 25,000 is advertising in that number.
So why don't
the
we separate
659
those
that you-
anyway? Because they ought to be.
Advertising is from McLaughlin from the advertising contract.
Yeah, I mean,
We could put them
wherever
on
it comes
separate
from, but the
lines.
point is the following, it's two separate line items, and if you're gonna look at the budget, it's two separate line items.
Yeah.
Venue is one line item,
I will.
advertising is a separate line
There you
item,
go.
and you have it, so it's just, so I go back and I say, okay, so the question mark is, we are consistently, although we're moving the dollar amount up on venues for this year, 65,000, right? We're even at that, it's $600,000.
So 50,000 in venues and 15,000 in advertising. So that's total venue revenue, but yes, 65,000 total.
Okay, so I go back again. Hot tax dollars have continued to increase over those years, 2017 to 18 to 19, right?
Actually, in 2017, they were really strong, but in 2018, sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. Let me go back to that slide. There we go. So in 2017 was that strong number that you mentioned earlier, the 659, with 25,000 of that being in advertising. But then in 2018, dropped back down to $566,000. Right now, we're projecting for 2019, given what we have on the books and what we're expecting, at least in working with the department, a ballpark of about between around 585 for FY19.
So if it's 585 and we're planning the budget at 600, it's only a $15,000 increase, not 65,000.
From the current year budget, not the actuals.
Actual. I want actuals, because actuals are actuals. They're not budgeted. So we're going to project only 600,000, and so it's only a $15,000 increase, not a 65,000.
From what we are projecting for FY19.
I know.
Yes, ma'am.
Budget
That's
year.
correct, yes.
Yeah. Budget doesn't mean anything if we're exceeding it.
I'm okay with this if I like what Rick said, as long as it goes back to facilities.
And it won't be specifically designated for facilities. You all have control over that, though, to make it specific facility use if you want.
Which is what Lane is saying he wants to do.
Because of that unrestricted nature of that part of it, if we have a downward trend in occupancy tax revenue and need to decrease that line for a year or two, that money would also be available for that. So The stability, it provides stability for operating issues, and it provides a resource for capital type issues when that money falls to fund balance. And once it's in fund balance, again, council has to authorize its expenditure.
Well, and here's the deals. We know on an ongoing basis our facilities are going to need more and more maintenance, and dollars will continue to increase. So we've got to make sure that we understand the overall idea here is to ensure that we rent out and utilize the facilities, because we're only as good as people want to use our facilities. I mean, that's what it's about. And so the challenge has to be there. If we're at 585,000 this year, that's not much of a challenge to get to 600, in my opinion. Yes. Oh, Harry.
This is something that Sid and Rick and I have been working on for a little over 2 years to try to get an incentive to rent the facilities and utilize those dollars then to put back into facilities so that we can continue to do that. I understand the $15,000 is not much of a stretch, but if you look at the last 2 years, we didn't get to that spot. So anything that's over the $600,000 is actually going to come back into their fund balance and be an incentive for them anyway. So as long as we're not increasing hot dollars, I think it is a way that Sid and the Civic Events Board can look at. Let's look at how we can increase this, whether it's concessions, facility use fees, merchandise sales, whatever that is, in order to go make that fund balance larger. Thing that I wanted to do is what Lane's been talking about, is make sure that they come back before the council so that we've got that opportunity to help them spend it in the right way. I think we're headed in the right direction, and I certainly think this has been vetted often enough and long enough that I think this is a good way to go.
So obviously it's called the hot tax fund, which is hotel occupancy. So how are we tracking hotel occupancy here?
How are we tracking it?
Yeah, Civic Events, how are we tracking hotel occupancy and how many heads and beds we're making happen?
CVB coordinates with us for that effort. As far as, you're talking about this building, or are you talking about?
No, what I'm talking about is hotel rooms, the booking of hotel rooms.
I can't answer that question.
Mayor, you're talking about overall occupancy tax revenue, is that correct?
I'm talking about
To know how many
hotel
hotel
rooms,
rooms are
because this is
occupied.
hot tax money, which is heads and beds. The whole philosophy behind hot tax money is heads and beds. I mean, that's the philosophy, is this money is created by the number of people we put into a hotel room. And I want to make sure that when we ask for funds, whoever we are and whatever we do, that we're assuring that everyone understands the overall purpose here, because that's the way the hot fund dollars are created, is we put heads in beds, hotel rooms.
Well, as I understand it, all of these facilities basically are assisted in funding by this, whether it's the River Stage, the Convention Center, the Coliseum, any of those. And so those are all eligible sources. In this case, we rely on the CVB to assist in bringing in events and functions and all of those things. So recently, for this facility, as y'all know, we started tracking that. As I understand it, Carl has coordinated with the CVB on a formula on how to do that. We ask as we get in information, and so they've started that tracking process. Other than that, I'm not sure how else to answer your question. I can't give you totals or anything off the top of my head.
So we don't actually physically track. Let's say if we have a band come to town, do we know how much of it's from local? So there's very few hotel rooms. We certainly know when the stock show comes to town, the hotels are oversold. And so we know the impact there.
I think if you do that through StubWire, you can really track at least the zip code. Now, that doesn't guarantee you that the people that are purchasing the tickets are going to stay in the hotel room, but I think that's a good indicator that those things are that are out there. So if you've got a zip code from Dallas, for example, that's coming in here, that's buying tickets for a music venue, more than likely they're going to be in a hotel room. But to answer your question, Mayor, I'm not sure that you can physically track that unless the individual writes that in when they're registering at the
Well, zip codes don't totally do it.
That's what we've started doing, is that when people rent the facilities, we started asking that. So that is what I was trying to explain a minute ago. So that process has started. So they'll have that data as we go forward.
About having a mentality, and all I'm trying to establish is the fact that we're fully aware of what we want to try to accomplish, and that is to make our hotels successful by having high occupancy, because we all win with that.
It won't necessarily track that for, if we have a rental at the River Stage and they're having a concert, then I have no way of tracking how many of those people came from out of town and stayed in a hotel or not. So I'm only tracking it for events where the mayor comes and she's having a family reunion, and she tells me what data she knows concerning those attending.
Yeah, and the zip codes don't totally work because we have a lot of good fellow people who have credit cards and zip codes from other areas. So it's a good starting point, and it's a good way to look at it. There's nothing 100%. I just want to make sure we all understand what Hot Funds is about. We're not losing sight. It's hotels, heads, and beds. That's how we do well, when we get people in our hotel rooms. And our success in creating these funds is based off of that. All right, so we've discussed, are we needing to take a vote on this or just give you direction?
Direction.
So what we're saying based off of Lane's comments and Harry's comments is that anything over and above the 600,000 would end up going back for council to review for facilities maintenance or improvements.
Any revenue over expenditure within the civic events or the hot fund would fall to fund balance, and yes, require city council authorization to spend.
Okay.
So here, this is my second to last slide, so we're getting close to the end here. Current and proposed hot fund distribution. The current there, of course, is the $2.2 million that we have in the current year budget. Requested amount of $2.3 million, and then proposed, because we didn't know if there was going to be an increase for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, we just left it at the current amount, but we would seek your direction and whether you would want us to increase that amount as well and what they're requesting. And so to show you how that looks for a budget for next year, this is, again, without the increase to the CVB, but if you did want to increase to the requested amount, we would be really close to being able to absorb that within the $126,000 that's revenue over expenditure, because, of course, it's prorated for 3/4 of the year.
So you're asking if we are telling you to go ahead and accept the increase on a one-year basis for the CVB?
Yes, ma'am. Because we would bring that back in the proposed budget for next year, and as well, we would bring back the contract with that amount.
So I see heads nodding. We're not taking a vote from what I understand, but we're giving you the direction. So the direction is to add the CVB funds for a 1 year only, the presentation on hot tax with the excess revenue going to maintenance and venue upkeep.
And the $1,008,000 for civic events at a flat fee?
Yes.
Or flat
Yes.
designation?
I
Okay.
see everyone agreeing, right? Yeah. Okay.
All right. That's what I need for that one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Item J, first public hearing and introduction of an ordinance amending the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019 for reimbursed expenses and grants.
Okay, so this, we have two requests here. One is for the police department. They have the Edward Burns Memorial Justice Assistant Grant, and they're planning to use that to purchase thermal imaging scopes in the amount of $22,000. And then we have one more for the fire department. The fire department was recently deployed to California, and so this is a return of funds from the TIFSMIS program. And so they have been reimbursed in the total amount of salaries that were expended for that, as well as about $10,000 more for the use of equipment. And so they're wanting to budget for both the revenue and expense associated with that.
Do you need a vote on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Do I have, Lane, are you making the, and a second? I think Lucy beat you to it,
Oh,
so
okay.
you'll get the next one. All right, any public comment? No public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 6-0. The last item is item K, which is an update on sales tax revenue performance. And Tina, you're on.
Okay, so sales tax for the month of July was at 5.36%, and we are over budget for revenue for the year in the amount of $1.2 million.
It's good. The percent increase is continuing to narrow, but it does give us an additional $1.2 million to put towards our street repairs. That's great. Thank you.
And then just quickly, your sales tax by industry. This is for June. Of course, you know this lags a month behind, but just to give you a picture of what that looked like for June.
Very good. Okay. See, we need that hotel number go back. Sorry to bring up hotels again, but look how tiny the hotel number is. Does that mean we need a whole lot? We need a lot more hotel numbers. So
Well,
we
no,
can
that's
get
just the sales
hotel
tax,
rooms.
though.
Yeah,
That's
I know,
just the
but more
sales
hotel
tax.
rooms, more hotels, more dollars. That would be good.
Always good.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, we will now close the regular agenda of this.
We're not going to close session today, Mayor.
We're not.
We're not.
All right. Yes. So what we're going to do is there will be no closed session. So we are going to move on to item 9, which is follow-up and administrative issues. So there was no closed session, so nothing needed to be discussed there. Item B is consideration of approving various board nominations for the Tiers Board, Jason Fernandez for SMD 3 to a second term ending July 2021, Tony Hunter, SMD 5 to a first full term ending July 2021, and Tom Maurer, SMD 6 to a first full term ending July 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, I'm going to give the motion to Harry, the second to Lane. No, I need to give
give
this
it to
the
Tommy.
to give it to Tommy. I promise
I
you.
haven't had one all day, okay? So
Yeah, okay, give it to Tom.
Okay, Tom gets it. All right. With that, we'll take any public comment. No public comment. We will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. And are there any announcements or consideration for future agenda items from anyone on council?
Yes.
Yes, Harry.
I know I see Shane back there, and he's probably going to hate me for this, but I'd like to get an update of where we are on the potholes, because that burns my phone up almost every day about where we are. And I know that they struggle because of material and sometimes the rain, but I'd like to get an update. And it doesn't have to be next council meeting, but sometime in the next couple of council meetings, let's talk about it.
Shane, you want me to give him the update?
Yeah. There's still more to be done.
Shane and I are good friends.
With that, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Any opposed to that? We want Tom Thompson to get on his way to vacation, so we're going to end it. Motion passes 6-0, right? Yeah, he's heading out.
I don't know why he needs a